on mute throughout the webinar. If you have questions during either of these ladies' presentations, feel free to type them into the chat box on the right-hand corner of the screen. We will save 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the presentation for question and answers, and they can be geared for either Debbie or Elaine. And so please, if you have any questions, type them in, and Shirley will read them at the end of the webinar. We're very excited about our panel today, and I am so thrilled. We had a lot of people register for this webinar, so it's obviously one of the topics that people are interested in. We're very fortunate to have Elaine Roberts, who is the Executive Director of the South Dakota Parent Connection, the Parent Training and Information Center in South Dakota. She has been the Executive Director of the South Dakota Parent Center for quite a while now. I've known Elaine many years. What, Elaine, like 100 years, maybe?
Not quite.
We've known each other a long time. It started with us, and again, she has worked with the Native American population in South Dakota for many years. She has some great tips, some great direction to give parent centers, and anybody that works really with Native American families. The South Dakota Parent Connection Parent Center has been around for 26 years, so that tells you the wealth of experience that Elaine brings to this presentation. Under her direction, they have increased programs under the South Dakota Parent Center. They also house the Family Health Information Center, which assists children and youth with special care needs. They have the Navigator program, which was developed in partnership with their state's Department of Education. They also do the Rural Health Outreach Project, which is funded under a grant with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Resources. And on the weekend, Elaine works with Native American families providing culturally appropriate services. So I want to thank Elaine from my heart, and thank you for presenting and bringing your wealth of information to us. And I can't imagine what it's like running all these programs. And you can tell by her the contracts and grants that she has, one with the U.S. Department of Education, Department of Human Resources, Family Voices, and she has a wealth of partnerships that she works with, and I know she's going to share that in her presentation. But I want to thank you, Elaine, for being here and providing some great insight into outreach for Native American families. The next presenter also brings a wealth of information, Debbie Lente Ahola. We are so honored and grateful to have her on our staff and to have her a part of our team. Debbie Lente comes to us from the Bureau of Indian Education. She was the national director of the FACE program. And the FACE programs were initiated, a program out of the Bureau of Indian Education in 1990. And they currently have 44 FACE programs housed within the Bureau schools. So I know Debbie will share a little bit about this later, but for any of you that work in Native American family literacy, I would talk to Debbie or get some information from the FACE program. This program that she managed was designed to encourage family literacy, and it's an integrated model between early childhood special education and families. So Debbie has always had a heart for involving families, especially families of young children, and teaching and encouraging literacy with Native American youth. So Debbie, I thank you for being here from my heart. Thank you for your knowledge and your expertise in not only early literacy programs, but also family involvement. And Debbie's going to give some tips at the very end on, just from a cultural standpoint, from a Native standpoint, some summary points that Elaine is going to give. So without further ado, I would like to allow Elaine to go ahead and start her presentation. Thank you both.
Thanks. Shirley, if you want to go to the next slide, that would be great. Next one. And really, I want to talk from parent center to parent center to give you some ideas and strategies of what our parent center has done. It's really about what can we do together? Next slide. I like to have folks understand about South Dakota. We're the parent center in South Dakota. Those two orange spots on the map are considered the two urban areas of our state. Our main office is on the eastern side of the state in Sioux Falls, and we have a satellite office in Rapid City. And all of that in between is really very rural or frontier, with few folks per square mile based upon the federal definition. So you can see that our challenge is maybe different than those parent centers that are in urban areas in reaching out to families. Next slide. South Dakota has 9 reservations. And as you can see, if you compare it with the map before, our reservations are located in those very rural and frontier areas. They're by far, Native Americans are by far the largest minority in our state. And approximately, this is the 2010 census, it's probably even more now, but approximately 13.5% of South Dakotans under the age of 20 live on our reservations. I would also tell you that our reservations are located where there is a great deal of poverty, economic stress on those families. In fact, next slide. 4 of the poorest counties in the United States are located on Indian reservations in South Dakota. This just gives you a little bit of that. Poverty, our families live in poverty. It also happens to those that are urban Indians as well. The economic status of individuals in our state is a major barrier to access for Native families to services, and affordable transportation to reach services is an additional challenge. There are not reliable transportation systems. There are not honor reservations in many parts of rural South Dakota. So this presents a unique challenge to a parent center such as ours. Next slide. You heard Judy mention about the BIE schools and tribal schools. This is just a listing of tribal schools in South Dakota. And I would tell you that our parent center over the last, and we're 30 years old, our parent center has done some kind of outreach at every one of those BIE schools, either working with families directly, working with staff, in addition to the public schools that are located on the reservations. So one of the things I would say to those of you parent center directors is, do you know where the reservations are in your state? Do you know the BIE in tribal schools? Those resources are available for you to think about your outreach with those Native families. Next slide, please. So here are some of our strategies for our PTI. Is first to develop an outreach plan. With 9 reservations in South Dakota, it didn't happen overnight that we have built relationships. You need to start out with deciding what you want to do. how you want to do that outreach, and start small and begin to build those relationships. And we'll talk a little bit about that. It's really also important for parent centers to build your board of directors and your staff, and the staff's knowledge, one, about the resources that are available, local, state, and national resources to connect for families who are living on and off the reservation, and also to build a cultural awareness and some understanding of the differences in how we need to reach out to families. One of the things that we've learned is that in the beginning, it's important to develop a consistent contact person. For instance, on the western side of our state, having the same person be present and go to the reservation to meet with families, with tribal leaders, agencies that provide services and supports, but to have some consistent contact, to begin to build those relationships. We've also learned that you need to be pretty flexible. Those of you who know me know that I'm pretty organized and I like things to happen in a certain way. But one of the things that I've learned over the years is that there's a different cultural way of looking at time, and taking time. Time is more relaxed, and being flexible with that. I learned a long time ago, and it's one of the things that our staff works hard with. Whoever is present are the people who need to be there, and we need to share our information and support the people who are there. One of the things, really being present physically and mentally. Great storytelling. One of the things I learned a long time ago is you need to be ready to hear the stories and building those relationships. I like the term, we're all related and everything is related. And so paying attention to what those stories are, paying attention to really listening to what folks are sharing. But that being physically present, particularly in the beginning, has been very, very important for our staff and our parent center. Next slide. This is just some more of our outreach. Every tribe has a different culture and set of norms as to who you contact. In South Dakota, our tribes are not as formal, that you must be invited in by the chairperson of the tribe. We get contacts regularly from folks who are in charge of these various programs on the reservation. But begin to build relationships with Head Start. We regularly do workshops for Head Start staff and Head Start families, and share resources that we have for that early education. There's early Head Start. There's the FACE program, and Debbie can talk a little bit more about that. And there's also the Baby FACE program. In addition to the public Part B and C programs, there are also tribal Part B and C programs for IDEA. We regularly provide materials and stop to visit with folks at Indian Health Services and at those clinics, because that's where you can meet with families as well. Tribal school leaders and teachers contact us to ask for resources, to provide workshops. Public school leaders. We have many public schools that are on or near reservations also looking for materials. In South Dakota, at least, there's and I suspect that this is true other places, but there's a long history of outsiders coming in to help. We're here to help. We're here to provide you this. We're here to do this. We're here to do this. And so, and then those folks leave. We're here to help. We're going to provide you this. And then the grant runs out and we're gone. Programs are gone. And so it takes a concerted effort to build those relationships, make those commitments, and do what you say you will do. And, you know, I think at this point, in fact, one of our board members who is head of an education consortium on the Pine Ridge said, Parent Connection is not viewed as, it's viewed as an organization you can trust because they deliver what they say they will deliver. But we need to, as parent centers, understand that our responsibility is not just to the public schools in providing information on parent rights, on self-advocacy, on transition. Our responsibility is to the families and the young people across South Dakota. Next slide. Again, it's about building trust. We deliver our training in person. There are times, and you saw those huge distances in our state, you know, to deliver an hour workshop, and you have to travel 5 hours to get there. Sometimes doesn't make sense. And so we've tried one doing technology to do that. It didn't really go well because of the needing to be there. Needing to be present again. So we deliver our training in person. And someone might have a question, well, how do you do that? Well, we have a fairly significant in-state travel budget. That's the place where we plan for. These are the trainings that we're going to need to deliver in person. Many of our tribes have back-to-school fairs or parent nights. We attend those kinds of events and bring resources. We are regularly invited in to present at the Lakota Nation Invitational. They also have an educational piece along with that basketball tournament in December. We're invited in to present workshops for families. Attending those events and those particular things that are sponsored by not only one tribe, but several tribes. Great way to connect with parents and then parents know that they can contact us. One of the things that we've also built into our budgets for our various grants is to provide stipends for travel or child care for families to attend training off the reservation. Last spring we had a training in Rapid City, a parent advocacy leadership training, and providing some kind of stipend for travel, which is a real challenge for many families, or child care. Provides that little incentive that helps families be able to participate. In fact, we had a training this past weekend on Saturday and had some Native families participate, but traveled off the reservation, so stipends and travel money were available. We have many resources that we provide to families. A record-keeping system, a special education guide, a family resource guide. We mail those to families, or many times, as our staff are out traveling around the state, we'll deliver those resources in person. It makes sense for those resources to be where teachers are and where families are, so that families can utilize them.
Excuse
and again, I would...
This is Shirley. You have 5 more minutes left.
Okay, great. Deliver on your commitments. And the next slide, and this is my last slide. I cannot stress enough the value of collaboration and partnerships We work with the division, the DD, the Developmental Disabilities Network, which is our USAID, our Council on Developmental Disabilities, and our Protection and Advocacy Agency, to attend listening sessions on the reservation. We work with them. They do it regularly, but they've invited us to participate. This gives us information to inform how we might improve our programs. Another great partner that we have in South Dakota is with our vocational rehabilitation and the tribal VR programs. They also conduct listening sessions, and we've been invited in as a parent center. We're considered part of that. And of course, for parent centers, you know that the parent center is to be represented on the Board of Vocational Rehabilitation or the Rehabilitation Council, whatever you call it in your state. So that's another great way of figuring out, working with some partners. And then we partner with the Oacheti-Towaquin Education Consortium, which is on the Pine Ridge. And the leader of that consortium is on our board of directors and can also provide us with information. We have a staff member who's Native American who can also say, let's think about how we do this. I think it's really important to remember that the key for us is being respectful, understanding some of the challenges that families face, being good listeners, and then offering families, Native families, the resources and helping them or assisting them to make the choices they need to make for their children. Every reservation is different, and the culture is different, and that's the piece you have to be ready to be open and respectful to make a difference for those young people and their families. Okay? I think that's my last slide.
Good morning and good afternoon, depending on your time zone. This is Debbie Ventijojola. Work for the Native American Parent Technical Assistance Center. Ms. Shirley, next slide. Next slide. Thank you. Just as Elaine was sharing her perspectives and her hard work in terms of the South Dakota regions and parent centers that she has, the big piece about respecting communities is what Elaine detailed. And one of those big areas in respect is to learn about your own cultural beliefs for yourself before you can begin to understand and truly recognize the needs of other communities, which I'm sure many of your parent centers have already recognized. But learning about your cultural beliefs, values, and practices, and then analyzing those to see how they influence your beliefs and the beliefs that you have or the lifestyles that other families have when you're working with them is critical to your success as well. Next slide, please. So if we look back, many Indian reservations across the United States have what we call a lot of historical trauma. The South Dakota region specifically. I'm Pueblo, Native American here in south of Albuquerque as Plata Pueblo. And we do have our own types of historical trauma that we deal with in terms of the Spaniards, conquistadors, etc. But many Native American families have a lot of trauma dealing with boarding schools and the fact that they were removed from their reservations and taken to various cities or locations where the boarding schools were located. And oftentimes many of those types of relationships with schools have not been very, very positive. It brings back a lot of bad memories, concerns, not dealing with distrust. So when you look back at a lot of our locations, it's very, very important to find a location on the reservation that parents can identify with and trust. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about making connections, the locations that you may select may often not be schools, although sometimes schools can be the best location, as Elaine was pointing out with many of the BIE located schools on the South Dakota reservation. So as we think about our boarding school experiences and we think about the locations where we have services, many of the families with the locations you have a lot of recognition in terms of similarities and differences within their respective reservations. And as you learn more about Native American populations within your states, you have to learn about their culture as well, and especially about how they feel about schools, how they feel about services, just recognizing their needs and their assisting them to recognize that you're there to assist them is critical. Next slide, please. So we always speak to being very careful, to be very open to other minorities wherever we're at, and being very careful not to stereotype and develop a deeper understanding of the communities that you serve. Not all Native Americans live in a teepee. Not, for instance, here in the Southwest, we use the resources that are indigenous to this area, which is mud and we call them adobes that we make out of mud and straw, etc. Build homes out of there. Not all Native Americans wear feathers. Not all ceremonies are alike. Every reservation is unique and distinct in terms of their language, their culture, and the types of ceremonies that they have in their respective states. So being very cognizant of that and being careful not to generalize that all Native Americans wear feathers or sleep in teepees is a deeper, further understanding that I'm sure you've developed in your parent centers. Next slide, please. So as you try to understand your own biases, these biases also help and then support to you in your effective ways of communicating and interacting with families. Respect is a huge component of respecting the families that you serve. Building trust and building those partnerships in your interactions with families is another key component. Just as Elaine talked about, those connections out in the community, the partnerships that she's built, those connections are critical to your success as you provide further outreach to Native American communities. Assisting tribes, knowing that you're assisting a tribe and not going in as the expert. I know this and I know that. Many tribes want your help, need your help. Sometimes it can be a turnoff when you go in as the expert, when we know, just as we had in FACE and our baby FACE programs, in our home programs that we had, where we had parent educators going out into the community, they respected and they honored the types of ways that they help assist their child in whatever learning style they may have, to assist parents to build on their knowledge base and extend that knowledge even further with types of training or education that you might have, but respecting and honoring what they have first. It's also being with families, to be in the present and take time to interact with your families. One of my earliest learning experiences was to just go in there and boom, 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 want to share all this. But I always forgot that I have to present myself and introduce myself and take time to do the small talk. And yes, I know many locations that you serve in your states are very rural and isolated locations, but you have to take the time to build a connection and take the time to listen and be present with the families that you serve. And those building blocks help build a stronger, deeper relationship of trust and respect back and forth from family to you, etc. Next slide, please. Another key aspect in building relationships and connections within Native American communities is to find the unique resource people that can assist you in either helping you learn more about their culture and their practices, or assisting you with access to the unique populations that we want to serve. As I mentioned, there are key people in Native American communities that can provide that access. Many of those, as Elaine mentioned, were the FACE program, the early intervention special programs. Many tribes have received from the Bureau of Indian Education Part C and Part B monies, that's birth through 5 funding. That the key language in those, that dissemination of funding is to assist states in helping identify, locate in very rural and isolated locations children that may be in need of services. The Indian Health Services, clinics, hospitals on the reservations, there's, many families assist, take their children there for well baby checkups, or for children who are ill. Many of those doctors know who those children are on a first name basis. So finding those key resource personnel, people in the Indian communities can help you bridge another step towards building the partnership and communication with families. Next step, please. Next slide. Taking time, I cannot emphasize enough the time component in terms of developing, assisting, and providing further outreach to Native American communities. This depends on the size of the community, the number of people you already know, and how your community responds to your efforts. But it takes time. Anything worth building takes an inordinate amount of time, and it might not be just a one-time visit. In fact, I know for sure it's not just going to be a one-time visit. It'll take several visits first to build relationships, and then secondly to build connections, and then maybe the third piece, maybe the delivery of services. But it's not a first-time visit where you are able to share or get your word and messages out and provide further outreach. So take your time. Be in the present when you're at that location. Take the time to listen and hear and not offer solutions readily, as opposed to just providing information and say, I'm going to be back. So this is another key area I really, really want to emphasize in terms of your reach to those very rural and isolated locations, because many times you may be the first time that parents have someone coming in for a long time. It could be weeks, could be a month. Depends on the location and the ruralness of the reservation that you serve. Next slide, please. Another key ingredient to providing further outreach is knowing people in your community or groups, that you begin to build a network of people that you can share information with. Early intervention specialists in those rural and isolated locations who receive Part C, Part B money oftentimes have what we call, I believe in the North Dakota region, they call them infant trackers, where they provide assistance to families. Sometimes they do the ASQ, and they'll provide some outreach in that direction so that the ages, stages questionnaire is developmentally appropriate. It's knowing what a child can do, and they track those families to ensure that they hit the developmental milestones necessary for children. So those early interventionists are very important as well. The FACE folks, they have those parent educators out in the field. The baby FACE have parent educators as well. well-trained individuals who deliver those types of developmental milestone services. So it's very important. School communities on the reservation are just as critical, your health service people. So those networks of individuals really can provide you some in-depth into the community. Elaine talked about the communities that she works with, specifically on the Pine Ridge Reservation, the OSA program. Those folks really know their reservation and know the needs of the community just as well. And those can be the folks that you might want to make connections with because they know their communities. Next slide, please.
Debbie, you have 10 minutes left, okay?
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you.
Which one?
So, you're on the correct slide. You're correct. So, tribal offices, tribal government offices, teachers, administrators, school therapists, Head Start folks, they are key into helping further and strengthen and build your connections within the community. When you call a tribal office, make sure you get the name and the mailing address so that that's your introductory letter as well. And those key personnel within those small little communities really provide that outreach for you. Your voc rehab centers, the WIT program, Women, Infant, Child program, they're on reservations. Your education Department of Education within tribal communities can also lend a lot of support and guidance in terms of making connections for you too. Many Department of Education programs, tribal Department Education programs, know the key personnel within the community and oftentimes can provide the venue or make arrangements to help assist you in making connections. So there are a lot of key personnel in the education departments that can help as well. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, and I know that Elaine also mentioned the healthcare service providers, Indian health centers, public health programs, the nurses, the community health representatives, they all have specific connections for working with Native American families, and not just children with special needs, but overall Native American families who might need further assistance. The human services staff, I know that many Native American communities have social workers who also know of families that may need assistance, and they can also be key contact folks. Personnel within the communities. There are also parents in the Indian communities that are parent advocates and help train Native American families to help get more resources for their children with special needs. So parents as advocates can also lend a huge support to your endeavors in outreach. And here in the state of New Mexico, the Acoma Pueblo has some parent trainers or parent advocates. They are parents of children with special needs, and they help assist and make connections to take information out in the communities to help assist other parents of children with special needs. So they are a big connection for the EPICS program here in the state of New Mexico. Parent advocates strongly encouraged to help build that knowledge base so that there's a local person within the community that parents can also contact if they need information, and those parent advocates then know who in the state to contact as well. Next slide, please.
You have 5 minutes left, Debbie.
Okay. Make sure that when you contact individuals or agencies, here are some of the following points you want to share with them: is to share information about your services or your program. Ask them specifically if they can give you a name of someone, another person that you may be able to contact, and then ask them if they can help you if you need to make some one-to-one contact during your visit with parents to meet other parents or set up a venue to meet other parents. Here in the state of New Mexico, again, they have local child finds. The Pueblo Laguna has several child find venues going on, and they provide free food. They even provide transportation, because you have to remember that many of our reservations are very rural, isolated, and transportation may not always be the best way to get around. So you always have to sometimes provide that incentive with a little bit of transportation or child care, etc. Go ahead, please. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. And after making contact, always remember protocol is very important on American Indian reservations. Tribal leaders can be called, addressed by their titles, governor, chairman, or president. It's very different in each community. Here in the Southwest, we have a governor, but also speak to someone who's, someone will be assigned to work with you, so be sure to make sure that you establish those relationships, that they're strong relationships. Next slide, please. After making contact, it's always important to share information about your program, making sure you share those accomplishments and that you're there to help support families or assist families instead of the vice versa. I'm here to give you information. And make sure that you clearly explain what your goals and activities are. Next slide, please. Next slide. The follow-up is critical to your success as well. The contact that you make with that person, please make sure you follow up with them, and because it's important to create that relationship and build the trust and connection. Thank them, call them a week later, 2 weeks later to follow up. NAPTAC recently did some work with parent centers in Michigan. We provided an action plan template. We gave them names of individuals, and it was helpful for them to make contact, but also to keep coming back. I know that the parent centers in Michigan are working very heavily on making further outreach to their Native American communities. And stay in contact with that person. Next slide, please. Lastly and foremostly is each of us is on our own journey in terms of becoming culturally responsive person. A culturally responsive person, that's a lifelong process. So we need to make sure that we continue this journey with other support. Here are, the last slide here shows the contact personnel for each of those departments. And I know that this will all be posted. So please make sure that you make contact with Elaine, ask her specific questions, or with the NAPTAC Center individually. I thank you very much for listening, and I hope that we were able to provide you more inside information to help assist you in your outreach effort. We wish you good luck, and I will turn this over to Ms. Shirley.
Let me see if there's any questions.
This is Elaine. Be sure and type questions into the chat box, and we'll do the best we can.
Yes, thanks, Elaine.
I don't see any questions.
Neither do I.
Yeah, because I went all the way through. I don't see any questions.
Either that means, this is Elaine, either that means that we answered all your questions, or we didn't give you enough food for thought. I would just really want to iterate the importance of beginning the process as a parent center. Just beginning the process. If you have an outreach plan, think about how to do that outreach to Native American families. If you begin with one area, I think that's really important. The important part is to begin. And again, the Native American Parent Technical Assistance Center is here to assist you with, if you need some targeted help in figuring out how to do that, if you need some suggestions from other parent centers. I would say for our parent center, it's taken many years to get where we are at this point in time. And the important thing for all of us, because staff come and go, the important thing for us is that this outreach, this sharing, this respect is really built into the culture of our organization. It's expected that we're going to continue this work to ensure that our children, all of our children, have the best life outcomes that they can have. Takes time, but I would really encourage any of you who do have questions, you can let Debbie know. You can email our center, but NAPTAC is there to assist you as well. I don't know, Judy, if you want to say something.
Judy still on the line?
Yes.
I would ditto. Good. This is Debbie. I would just ditto exactly what Elaine has said. But some of the key just words that I want to leave you with are making connections, assisting families, developing partnerships, being open, being respectful, understanding the unique challenges that many of our Native American families have. They do have a lot of challenges in terms of rural, isolated locations, access to services, etc. And oftentimes, I know that families want the best. Any family wants the best for their child. So it just takes time and being patient with those families, and they will eventually recognize the strengths and the relationship building and the trust in you to develop those outreach. So I wish you well, and like as Elaine said, everything takes time. And building on that is what helps support families. Thank you.
I would just again like to reiterate the 2 points the ladies made at the very end is serving Native American families is an effort. It's not just something that is going to happen naturally where we sit back and kind of wait. We don't do that in our office, wait for the Native families to come to us and call on our phone. We go to them. So just reiterating what both of these ladies have shared, you have to make those first steps. Design a plan, an outreach plan, even if it's just one tribal community in your state this year, to try to reach those Native families. Again, those are also your families. They're in your state. They're not our families. They're your families. In any way we can assist you, Elaine, Debbie, or I are always available to say, here's what you need to do on that first step. Here's how you can do it. We're there to help you in any way. I know Elaine, like she said, it takes time, but you can start tomorrow and make a difference. So we want to thank you, ladies. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Debbie, for this wonderful presentation. And we hope we have given you some food for thought. And if you have any questions later on, you can call Elaine, Debbie, or I, and email our websites. However you'd like to get a hold of us, we'd love to talk to you. Anyway, thank you all for your afternoon. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Shirley.